Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Good morning.
Thank you for coming in this weather. I understand not so many people could come. Today, I'd like to talk on this text, Opening the Hand of Thought, page 102. 1, 2, 3. Fourth paragraph, fourth and fifth paragraph of page 102. Let me read these two paragraphs. Nevertheless, it is also true that we aren't always living free. We aren't always actualizing our life. This is because, unlike the flowers in the fields, human beings bear the burden of thought. Thought has a dual nature. Thoughts spring from life, and yet it has the ability to think of things totally ungrounded and detached from the fact of life. This is delusion, and it leads to some strange consequences. A politician says to herself, "I got to whip Tanaka in the election," and her heart races, though she is alone in her room talking to herself and not in the midst of any competition. A man goes, G-O-A-D-S, goes himself deliriously. I cannot pronounce correctly. I cannot distinguish L and R sound.
Deliriously.
Deliriously, okay. With thought of I'm going to get my hands on that mine and make myself a fortune. Though he is not within reach of it, and there is no price tag hanging from pieces of the ore. So this is about delusion. The title of this section is Delusion and Zazen. And in the first paragraph of this section, he said, Zazen is the actualization of the middle way. That is the very quick of life. It is life as life. So in our Zazen, life reveals itself as it is. But in the second paragraph, he said, one might well ask whether we exert ourselves or not. Aren't we always living life as it is? So everywhere, always, whatever condition our body and mind are in, we are living the life. So there's no way we get out of the life or against the life. So what this means, why we have to practice this special, kind of a strange practice to reveal the life if we are always living the life. That is the second, what Uchimura said, second paragraph. And he said in the same paragraph, isn't it nonsense to speak of living apart from life? Because we are always in the life. And he said, this is indeed so. And it is the basis of the Buddhist teaching that all beings have Buddha nature. So last time I talked about Buddha nature. So whether we are deluded or not, Buddha nature is always here. So why we have to make effort to make, in a sense, make distinction between Buddha nature and not Buddha nature or delusion, and we have to make choice. These two paragraphs is an answer to this question: why we have to practice if we have already Buddha nature. And he said, it is also true that nevertheless, or however, or and yet, Dogen and Okumura Roshi always like this word, and yet, or however. And yet, it is also true that we aren't always living free. We aren't always actualizing our life. That means often or almost always we lose the sight of life, even though we are living within the life. And the reason, according to Okumura Roshi, is this is because, unlike the flowers in the fields, human beings bear the burden of thought. So the thought or thinking is a problem. And he said this thinking came from our life. So this is a part of our life. And yet this thinking has two sides. One is it came from the life. But this thought has the ability to think of nothing to do with the reality of life. So our life, our thought can be fiction, or delusion, or fantasy. That is the problem. That means we can think, our brain can think something it's not there somehow. And as a human beings, we cannot live without brain. That means we have to live with this ability to create a fantasy or delusion or fiction. And it is really important part of our life. If we don't have this ability, we can't write poetry, or we can't make stories, or we cannot have a vision or a plan for the future, or we cannot think of even like enlightenment or the nirvana or the heaven or paradise or God or even Buddha, because we don't see Buddha. Whatever we think about Buddha is from the text or from someone's talk. So that is simply our perception and conception. We don't really see Buddha. So if we don't have this ability to think of something which is not really in front of our eyes, then Buddhism doesn't make sense at all. So this ability is really important, and also it makes us human beings, to allow us to live as a human beings. So human beings has a kind of two kind of aspect. We cannot live separate from the reality, but we can think of something which is not reality. And if we are too much in this side, then our life becomes fantasy or delusion. So somehow we have to see both and try to make a balance, and also try not to be too much apart from the reality. Otherwise, we become a kind of mental illness. And our life has nothing to do with the actual life. That is, I think, one of the important points of Buddhist teaching. please.
At this point, I have a question. I mean, I think there are also people who are very, very insistent on only what they see, and people who are very suspicious or have doubts about anything beyond that.
Right.
How do those people?
That is a point of Okumura Roshi discussion. Even in the political world or even religious world, same thing happened, and they don't think they are lunatic. They think that is truth, and whatever against their idea or picture of the world or system value is wrong. Or everything against their idea is delusion. That is a problem. And we cannot discuss which delusion is more delusive or closer to reality. So what Okumura Roshi and I think including Buddha talking with how this kind of things happened. How we think what we see is real, and what other people see is not real. That, I think that is the cause of the problem. Of course, we can argue about those people who had very kind of one-sided, fixed view, and say, their view is too much, one-sided and fictitious. But they counter-argue to us. So as a Buddhist or Buddha student, what important for us is how these things happen, how our brain works in that way, I think. And Okumura Roshi introduced two kind of examples. One is a politician who is thinking, I have to compete with that person and I should be a winner in the election, or the businessman who is thinking about buying something to make money. And Okumura said what they are thinking has nothing to do with the reality, because reality is not in front of them. They are not in the campaign, the politician, and the mine is not for sale yet. So what they are thinking is not real reality. But we don't think those politicians or businessmen have mental illness. It's a kind of ordinary way our mind works, whether we are a politician or a businessman or anything else. But we know there are some kind of thinking that is completely apart from the reality, or another kind of perception or thinking that is very close to the reality. So there are different kind of perception or thinking, and also the degree, how much depart from the reality is also different. For example, when I visit other cities, and I always want to walk as my exercise, and often street doesn't have sidewalk, so I have to walk on the very tiny space by the lane, cars are running, and so when I walk on the side of the road, when I see the car is coming, whether I think it's reality or not, the car is coming. I have perception that the car is coming. If I try not to, avoid the car, then I'll be hit. I think this kind of thinking, I have to avoid. It's very close to the reality. There's no space of discussion whether this is right or wrong. So this kind of thinking is very close to the reality. And probably those politicians and businessmen are, the way of thinking is a mixture of reality and something fictitious. And there are some other kind of perception or thinking completely fictitious. So there are degrees, I think. But how we need to think how these things happen in our mind. And I'd like to introduce one of the Zen teaching, or Zen Buddhist teaching. How these things happens in our mind. This is a translation of the title of this book is The Bodhidharma Anthology, and the subtitle is The Earliest Record of Zen. Modern scholars think this is the oldest scripture or text of Zen, very close to Bodhidharma. And in this text include one teaching of Bodhidharma about 2 entrances and 4 practices, and the rest of the text is a kind of letters among so-called Bodhidharma students. This is quite long, about 1 page, but it's not difficult, so let me read. And there is a question. The question is, how is mind the substance of the path? This path is same as way or Tao. So how is this mind? Shin, or mind, is the basis of the way or Tao? This is a question. And the answer is, mind is unconscious like trees or stones. I'm not sure this word unconscious is right or wrong, but and also this is in the bracket. This means this word is not in the original Chinese. Anyway, so the mind is not conscious. Not conscious means our thinking. So in this case, this mind or shin is not our thinking, discriminating mind. And this person, supposedly Bodhidharma said, mind is like trees or stones, not thinking. So Okumura Roshi often said, in this case, mind or shin is not thinking mind, but almost like our life. And it is as if there were someone who painted dragons and tigers with his own hand, and yet upon looking at them became frightened. So, we paint the tiger or dragon, something fearful, and we become fearful. By the painting, we paint it. And what he's saying is that is what's happening in our mind. Deluded people are also like this, the brush of thought and consciousness. So in this case, this shin, basic shin and thought of consciousness is ishiki. In Yogacara teaching, shin is alaya, consciousness, and E is, No, I'm sorry. E is seventh. That is thinking and discriminating mind. And Shiki is alaya consciousness.
What consciousness?
Alaya is storehouse. The deepest layer of our consciousness. But here in Zen teaching, there's no such clear distinction. But so we can understand this ishiki, or thought and consciousness is our thinking mind. So this shin and our thinking mind are two different things. So the brush, we use this thinking mind as a brush. And paint razor mountains and sword forest. Razor mountains and sword forest are the scenery of the hell. And yet it is thought and the consciousness that fear them. So they paint something fearful like tigers and dragons or the scenery of the hell, and they themselves become fearful because by the painting they made. And yet it is thought and consciousnesses that fear them.
I'm sorry, I didn't get those two words. Thought.
Thoughts, thought and the consciousness.
Got it. Thank you.
That is E and Shiki.
Yep.
And yet it is thought and the consciousnesses that fear them. If you are fearless in mind, then false thought will be eliminated. The brush of mind and the consciousnesses discriminates and draws forms, sound, smells, taste, and touchables, and upon looking at them in turn produces greed, anger, and stupidity. So here, brush of mind and consciousness, that ishiki, discriminated and draws forms, sound, smells, taste, and touchables are the five of the six sense, object of six sense organs. And this is the six sense organs. So when six sense organs encounter with those objects, these became the perception and became the object of our mind. And using these kind of material, we paint. Sometimes we paint these the fearful things like a tigers or the scenery of the places we live, like a hell or heaven or somewhere between them. So this mind and object of the mind paint each and every beings and the total picture of the world, including all of them. So these are the painting made by our mind. That is a very basic thing. So when we encounter something from our past, we have many experiences. Experience means encountering with those things. And same things happened repeatedly. So somehow in our mind, there's some kind of a fixed notion or a concept about these things. Those are the paintings. And when we see new things as this, somehow we interpret all those things based on what is already stored in our mind. So this is like a preconceptions. Our experiences become some kind of preconceptions, and we use these preconceptions as a measure as a ruler to measure or judge what are these, whether they are good thing or not good thing, or I like this or I hate that. So this is how our mind create the picture, and even when they are the things actually they encounter is not so dangerous. If we have very dangerous, painful experience in the past about the same thing, then we react not exactly based on the reality of what is really in front of them, but that kind of a control our mind, and we take action based on what is stored. Basically, this is what is said or what is taught in Yogacara teaching. So this teaching in Zen is a kind of mixture of Yogacara teaching about how our life become fiction. So whatever we encounter is our consciousness, or painting made by our consciousness. But this scene is Buddha nature. So this is a kind of a mixture of the theory of consciousness only, or Yogacara teaching, and also the Tathagata Galpa, or Buddha nature theory. This is a kind of a combination of both. Anyway, so the brush of mind and the consciousnesses discriminates and draws forms, sounds, smells, taste, and touchable, those objects, and upon looking at them, in turn produces greed, anger, and stupidity. If those things look good to me, then we have greed to make them my possession. Often those objects looks not valuable, or I dislike this, then we have anger or hatred. And those discrimination are ignorance, or in this translation, stupidity. But we think that is the real thing. And that is really happening in our mind. That's how our life and our world in which we are living, and each and every incident become a kind of part of story we create in our mind. And always we are the hero or heroine of this story. And we always want to be, this is a happy ending story. And we want to feel we are okay. Even though they are not, in order to feel we are okay, we think they are not okay. That is how our mind works with this, the seventh consciousness that is called ego consciousness. That's how our life becomes ego-centered. Sometimes it is fascinated and sometimes repelled. Due to the discriminations of thought, mind, and the consciousnesses, various sorts of karma are in turn produced. Based on this, we take action. This action is actually deed. Action is our karma. And karma is again stored here. So we added new seed by taking action. And that became the kind of a ruler to measure other things we meet next time. If you can realize that thoughts and the consciousnesses from the outset have been void quiescent, and also avoid seeing the locus of the arising of thought and the consciousnesses, then you are cultivating the path. or the way. This means we should see this is a kind of a psychological mind, how psychological mind functions. But as our life, this shin is always in this translation, void quiescent. Void quiescent is a translation of kujaku. Ku means empty, or in this translation, void. So this mind is always emptiness. And jaku means quiescent or calm. So this mind, this fundamental mind is always emptiness and calmness. Please.
Is that, don't they refer to that as one of the seals of, what do they call it? Seals of existence? They talk about impermanence, egolessness, and they talk about
yes, same word when it is used as nirvana. So in this teaching, this mind is always in nirvana, but this function of our psychological mind is always samsara. So how can we, in one theory, how can we return to this? How can we pacify or stop the function of this thinking mind and return to this empty and calm, peaceful mind? Is our practice. This is one of the Buddhist or Zen teachings, how we stop our function of our mind and become one with this empty and peaceful mind or shin. Yeah, any question?
Yeah. So the empty and peaceful mind, what is its relationship to awareness? For example, can the empty, peaceful mind be aware of ishiki and not caught up with it?
In this theory, this never can be an object of our mind, because this is our mind itself. So there's no way to see this empty and calm heart or shin as an object. If we do such a thing, we are thinking about it. So in this theory, the way we become one with this is just stop thinking, or to aware that everything happening in here is painting, only consciousness. That is the only way this can be revealed within our life. So this cannot be an object of our mind or idea or concept.
So what is its relationship to awareness?
So I think awareness is to be aware that what's happening here is not reality. But we cannot see reality itself. Be aware that we are whatever things happening and thinking in our mind is only consciousness. According to Yogacara, that is awareness.
So awareness is not kujaki.
Then awareness is like a function of our thinking mind. Then it's not emptiness already. So that means that is one of the reasons we have to just sit. And our practice is not meditation. We don't meditate about this mind, but when we letting go of everything happening here, this is already there. That is the idea of our Zazen practice. So no kind of our practice is not kind of a contemplation practice to visualize something as an object, or to think about certain point of Buddha's teaching, or even this emptiness cannot be the object of our mind. But when we sit and letting go, emptiness is already there. That is the idea of our Zazen practice. So in our practice, awareness or awakening has no object. We don't awake to certain particular thing, even this reality itself, because we are living in the midst of reality. So we cannot see the reality as object, because we are part of it. That is what Dogen says when he talks about self and myriad things. The self is a part of myriad things. So we cannot see the myriad things as object. When we see in that way, even this becomes concept. Does it make sense? So that's why Dogen said we should just sit. And this just sitting is itself dropping off body and mind. And this just sitting is Buddha's practice, not the practice to make deluded human beings into Buddha. So what Dogen teach is, this theory is still dualistic.
Idealistic?
Dualistic.
Uh-huh.
This and this, samsara and nirvana. So we should stop this and return to this. Then this is still dualistic. So what Dogen want to say is these two are not two separate things. This is one thing. That is kind of a very strange teaching. But unless we point that the oneness of these two, then our practice is dualistic. This is bad, this is good. So we should abandon this and attain that. So I'm not sure Dogen completely agree with this teaching, but this is one of the oldest teaching of Zen. Anyway, let me continue. Some, by discriminations of their own mind, draw tigers, wolves, lions, poisonous dragons, evil spirit, the generals of the 5 paths of rebirth. 5 paths of rebirth. Often we call 6 paths or 6 ways or 6 realms, but some part of Buddhist teaching there are only 5 realms. Anyway, this is samsara, and this is samsara. And what this teaching is discussing is samsara is created in our mind. It's not the objective places outside of our beings, and we are be born, live, and die, and reborn to another realms, depending upon what we do in this lifetime. That is kind of a common belief about transmigration within samsara or reverse. But at least in this teaching, all those 6 realms are created or painted within our mind. The evil spirit, the generals of the 5 paths of reverse, King Yama, the ox-head gods of hell, and the hell of the sound of cold. Anyway, this is something happening in the after this world. I don't want to explain because I never experienced these things. Anyway, what they are saying is these things are happening within our mind. these things are discriminated by their own minds, but they are then controlled by these things. So we painted these different conditions, and we are controlled by the painting we made. These things are discriminated by their own mind, but they are then controlled by these things, and so they undergo various sufferings. Realize that whatever mind discriminates is merely forms. If you awaken to the fact that mind from the outset has been void quiescent, and know that mind is not itself a form. This form is shiki, that means look. Mind is not itself a form, then mind is unconnected. That means mind is unconnected with this fictitious world. Forms are not forms. Then, we interpret in this world. We interpret these forms in various ways, and we make paintings. But actually, the form is not form we perceive, and mind is not mind. They are constructed in the manner of an illusion by your own mind. If you merely realize that they are not real, then you will attain liberation. So, according to at least one of the Buddhist teaching or theories, this is how our life becomes fictitious and delusions. And I think that is, I don't know, 100% or not, correct or not. But this is one, I think, very realistic teaching how what is happening in our mind. And this is, this theory of consciousness only is, made almost 2,000 years ago, at least more than 1,500 years ago. Buddhist teachers already knew subconsciousness, what's happening deeper than this psychological mind. So when we encounter some things and we have some experiences, there's something remained in our mind as a seed. And depending upon what kind of experience we have from our birth, even before our mind have memory, even when we are in the babyhood, still all those things are accumulated in our deepest layer of our consciousness. And whenever we encounter something, we make observation and make concept or definition and make judgment based on what is stored in our mind. And we create the painting about these things. So these things stored in our consciousness, and these things happening around us, working together, and create the picture of the world. That is why Uchamuro said, we and the world are one. When we are born together with this world. In this case, this world means the world of my experience. And that is how our world, or our view is created. And even this teachings is a concept. So in order to really become free from this fictitious world, what we can do is letting go. Or in Yogacara teaching, just see this is only consciousness. That is one way of practice.
Just see this as
See
only
this
consciousness.
is consciousness.
The Ishiki consciousness.
Production of consciousness.
Yeah.
Whatever we think about other people or we value about our experience is the production of our consciousness. So that is what we do in our Zazen by letting go of thought. By letting go of thought, we become free from this kind of very tight bounding about things happening, things stored in our mind, and actually things are in front of us. We think because of these things are stored in our mind, to me, this is only possible way to see how these are and what this is, or right or wrong, or good and bad, or I like this, or I hate that. This is very clearly bounded. And I think this is the only possible way of viewing things and make judgment. And depending how our consciousness and things happening combined, our condition became like a hell, or sometimes like a heavenly beings. Sometimes we feel everything is okay, everything is good for me. Not too often, but almost always halfway between hell and heaven, somewhere, between hell and heaven. And that is how we create our world. And the important point is this world is created in this way, this kind of a mechanism of our life. So we cannot live without this. That means we have to stay in samsara. But also, as our life, all those judgment, thinking, painting is a fiction. That is what emptiness and quiescence means. So we are always also living this Uchamlo said life, or middle way of life, or reality of life. Means before these paintings are painted. Please.
The teaching that you read from the Bodhidharma sounded so much like Dogen's painting of a rice cake. I mean, the teaching about painting.
Yeah.
Is it exactly the same notion?
I'm not sure. As I said, probably Dogen didn't like this separation. But this and this is actually one thing. Then how can we see, this is a kind of how can I say, for example, in the Vimalakirti Sutra, there is a discussion about entering the gate of non-duality, or oneness. And when Vimalakirti asked many bodhisattvas, how can you see non-duality? And many bodhisattvas say these two, like arising and perishing, are duality. So we need to go beyond this and see neither arising nor perishing. And many bodhisattvas say the same kind of things. These are duality, and we should go beyond it. But finally, when Manjushri was asked, he said, all what you said is dualistic, or you create duality between duality and non-duality. So, no matter how much we discuss about this way, we cannot enter oneness or non-duality. So we should stop all thinking and sayings that is what Manjushri said. Yes, that's so. What Manjushri said is still in this realm. Then Manjushri asked Vimalakirti, and Vimalakirti kept silence. And Manjushri said, "This is the most eloquent expression of non-duality." But still, we need Manjushri. Otherwise, we don't really understand the silence of Vimalakirti. So, what this teaching is trying to say is that whatever we say, even about the teaching of non-duality, is still duality. The real non-duality is possible when we stop doing this. Please.
Just what you said there reminded me where you said earlier about sometimes we're much closer to reality than other. And maybe that's what we would say about this kind of teaching, even though it is still words, it's much closer to reality than other things would be.
So they are talking about how, this world of samsara, world of like and dislike, or meaningful or meaningless, or variable or not variable, are created in our mind. And as a theory, I think this is pretty close to what is really happening and how our life becomes samsara. And how we can become free from this world, seeing this world is a fiction. Even though this is a fiction, we cannot live outside of this world, fictitious world, because we are living within human society. Even though for example, red, yellow, green light is a fiction. It's a kind of a simply made up thing, but all human beings agreed, that is our rule. So we need to follow them, even though that is a fiction. Even those are rules, but green light is not always safe, right? So if we think that is 100% reality, then it's our life becomes dangerous sometimes. But in a normal condition, we have to follow the rules, made up rules, because we are part of this fictitious world. So our practice is not completely eliminate, this thinking mind or world created in our thinking mind. But we need, if we think what we painted within our consciousness is real reality, as the people, Sergei mentioned, then it's dangerous, and it doesn't make our life healthy. So I think that is one of the point of Buddhist teaching and Buddhist practice, how we can be free from our painting. When we start, whether my painting or your painting is right or wrong, there's no conclusion. Only thing we can do is fight against those things and eliminate them. Then we are in the realm of Ashura, or fighting spirit. So I think that is, the meaning of our Zazen practice, to experience that the paintings we paint is not real thing. But we cannot live without painting. So I think the important point is letting go. Letting go doesn't mean eliminate them, but we become free even only when we are sitting facing the wall. We become free from this real samsara created in our mind. So this is what delusion means, which Ambrose discussed. And in our Zazen, we let go. That means we see this view is created by our mind. Or basically, our mind or our consciousness and the things happening around us working together. This is what I have to say today. Any question or comment?
Maybe this is a big question, but how would, Dogen has a chapter called Great Realization, and he talks about great delusion. How would that apply to this? The idea that we still paint. In other words, it's still delusion, but there's realization within that.
Yeah. Kind of a basic teaching of Buddhism. This is realization, and this is delusion. But as a bodhisattva, our practice is not eliminate or escape from this world and enter nirvana or realization. If we do so, our practice is based on duality. This is bad, this is good. So I escape from here and go there. But as a bodhisattva, we need to live together with all beings, and all beings are living here. So we, as a bodhisattva, we need to, in a sense, become free from this realization. That is what in the expression Dogen used there is kyakumei. Kyakumei is return to delusion. Or shitsugo. Shitsugo is losing realization. We have to lose realization. But of course, we need to see, this is a fiction. But in order to work with people who live in the fictitious world, we also need to have some fiction. And all these Buddhist teaching is kind of a fiction that can be used as a tool to see, what we experience is fiction. I think that is what Dogen discussed in Shogo Genzo Daigo. That is the same as he said in Genjo Koan. Buddhas realize within realization and what they said, living beings are deluded within delusion. So delusion and realization, or samsara and nirvana, interpenetrate each other. This is not two separate realms. So our practice is not living here and enter there, but our practice is moment by moment. That is why I think Shōhaku Roshi said we have Buddha nature, but we also have a thief nature. So whether we become Buddha or thief, depending upon what we do right now, or how we do things, moment by moment. If we actualize, this egocentricity, then we are really a thief. Thief nature is actualized. But when we become free from this egocentricity and do things wholeheartedly to help the person in front of us, then Buddha nature is revealed. So it's not a matter of I'm deluded or they are enlightened, but depending upon our action each moment, our life becomes delusion or realization. Please.
I don't understand why Dogen would say release delusion or release nirvana or return to delusion, because isn't that jumping back into duality?
I think that is how we become free from duality. mean, there's no such separation between delusion and realization, or samsara and nirvana. So we need to return to samsara. Of course, this word return or enter is a problem. And this is a problem we always have when we use the word.
Okay.
Like this shore and the other shore. That is already dualistic.
Yeah.
And what Dogen said is, we go there and yet return here. Means these two are not two separate things.
Yeah. Okay.
Does it make sense?
Yeah.
I think that statement that you mentioned before, where what was it? Out of compassion, we don't stay in nirvana, and out of wisdom, we don't stay in samsara. That might be
So no abiding.
Yeah.
No, so we have no abiding, so we can freely go there and return. And this is another meaning of Sawakiroshi's nickname, homeless. I think we don't stay here as a home, or we don't stay there as a home. We are homeless. Okay, please.
So I thought you might be, or we might be interested in what the neuroscience says about the brain in two different realms. One is that when a person is taking in stimulus from the external world, that takes about 20% of the brain's energy, and 80% of the brain's energy is the brain talking to itself about what it's receiving. So one of the ways I wonder about thinking about that is 80% of what's happening in the brain is papancha.
It's happening here.
Yeah.
And 20% is about interaction between things outside and things inside.
And one other piece related to that is that neuroscience is saying that there's a default mode of the brain that... Default. It means like an automatic. Out of habit, the brain tends to think about oneself, about me, and how I can get better or avoid something, or get something that I want. And that this happens, traditionally it happens with people when they're not doing anything in particular. For example, even driving, that could happen.
Yeah. I think in Yogacara teaching, that is the seventh consciousness, or ego consciousness.
Okay. And there's a place in the brain that is more tuned into direct experience. And there's
like when we see the car coming to us.
Okay. Or sees an object, sees colors, sees shapes, and hears sounds. And that there are people who can train themselves to be more tuned into direct experience and less overtaken by the default or the regular mode of thinking that was very me-based. And those people are much better at self-regulation of their behavior, their emotions, their thoughts.
They are not controlled by those fictitious painting. I think that almost the same with what Buddhism teaching.
Yeah.
It's interesting, very interesting.
The curious thing about this particular article that I read is that there's a notion that this is better for the individual not to get caught up in the default mode thinking, because she's happier and she's more collaborative and she's more empathetic and she's better off. It doesn't go to the place that you're talking about here, that there's yet a whole nother dimension.
That's very interesting. Okay, anything else? Okay, thank you.